Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Business Growth Pod. I'm Alan Draper. You're familiar with me by now. Thanks for listening to my podcast, by the way. I don't say that enough. I appreciate the feedback that I get from my listeners. I appreciate, this platform. I don't monetize it. You guys know I don't have advertisers. For me, it's about making connections and putting something out there for entrepreneurs that are getting started and trying to really scale their companies in the early years. That's my passion. That's something that I'm very good at. And just thanks for enjoying the ride with me. I appreciate it. I'm excited for our guest today. Today, Paul Miners is joining me. Paul is a well-known productivity expert. Check this out. His blog gets over 100,000 visitors a month, which is crazy. On his blog or through his blog, he shares advice on how anyone can be more effective with their time and get more done. Paul has also helped over 410 businesses optimize their workflow so they can scale and grow faster. So I know that this is going to be an episode that is going to add extreme amounts of value to you as you're in the process of starting up. So welcome to the show, Paul. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, thanks for having me today.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into productivity and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for me, productivity was something I really found an interest in when I was back when I was studying at university. So about 10 or 11 years ago now. And for me, that was a time where, you sort of left school. And when you start university or college, I know you call it in the States, you're really sort of on your own a little bit. Where at school, you've got your teacher chasing you and reminding you to do assignments and turn up to class. At least here in New Zealand anyway, nobody's chasing you to do anything. You're really sort of on your own. You've really got to hold yourself accountable. And so it was a period of time where I became naturally interested in productivity as I was suddenly, a lot more in control of my time and had to really manage myself and make sure I was getting prepared for classes and get assignments in on time, things like that. And so I started experimenting with like blocking out time on my calendar for planning the work that I needed to do and just really making sure I could get everything done. So it was during that time I kind of found this interest in productivity, but it became apparent to me that productivity isn't just about getting stuff done. It's actually like a skill set that really helps you to get more out of life in general. It's not just about doing your work effectively. Productivity defined as being effective and efficient, and that applies to everything that you do. So it was something I naturally became interested in. And then how my business started, which was around 2015, 2016, I'd started my blog. I'd been blogging for a few years. I'd had my podcast, and I'd always wanted to work for myself. I'd sort of studied marketing and entrepreneurship at university, always wanted to be kind of just in charge of my own time and independent. And so I've been doing the blog for a few years, and I thought, well, what can I do to sort of just replace my salary? Because I was working full time at the time, and that was my first goal: is I just want to replace my salary. I just need like a few $1,000s a month, and then I could do this full time. And so I thought, well, maybe I could do some consulting or something. I could work with some businesses because that's like a quick and easy way to sort of get going. And I thought, what skills do I have? How could I help people? And so rather than being too general and sort of being the productivity expert, I actually niched down and focused on a few tools, a few software products that I thought I could specialize in and help businesses with. So now, so I built my business on, and the services we provide today are around helping companies with Asana, which is a project management tool, and
I use Asana.
Pipedrive. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and Pipedrive, which is a sales CRM. We also do quite a lot with Zapier. We help automate different systems and processes for businesses. And so with those three tools, that's kind of the core of the business. I have some sponsorship revenue, some affiliate marketing income, but the bulk of our time and revenue is spent working with small businesses, helping on these three tools, helping them to set them up, train their teams, because tools like these, like Asana and Pipedrive, as you know, they're only as good as how well you use them. And so I kind of got going with all of that in 2016 still on the side while I was working full time. And I was able to kind of replace my salary working on my side business, like 15 to 20 hours a week. And I thought, well, if I can replace my salary doing 15 to 20 hours a week, maybe I can now quit my job. And if I do this full time, I should grow my income really. And so I was able to make the leap to full-time self-employment at the end of 2016. Actually went traveling for 5 months during that time when I made that switch. And 5 years later, I'm largely still doing the same thing. My process has changed a lot. The team has grown. We just continue to refine the process and how we do things. But that's how I got going. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's very interesting that you said that productivity is a skill set, right? Because that's not how I think about it. But the more I get involved in business and with my family, and I get pulled in all these different directions, the more that makes sense. Like, I've never heard it put that way, but that makes sense. And who I want to know who on this planet isn't trying to be more productive, right? I feel like it touches everybody and everything, regardless of whether you want to spend more time with your cats or, you want to spend more time building your business. And so I think our objective today, Paul, should be, let's focus on these early entrepreneurs and let's give them some tips to help them be more productive in those early years that are especially important and especially chaotic. What are veteran, experienced productivity experts doing? What are on a high level? What are they doing differently than the rest of us?
Yeah, I think with the clients that we've worked with who are doing really well, or businesses that I think operate really efficiently, have really good systems. And maybe I'm biased, right? Because my business is around helping people with systems, but I'm drawing on what I know. And if I were to give advice to somebody who's in that first year or first 6 months of their business, I would say, make sure you're developing and setting up good systems now, because the challenge that I see a lot of people run into, and this is a large portion of the clients we work with, are businesses who are a few years down the line. They're growing quickly. They've gotten going. They're generating some good revenue, and they're growing quickly. They're hiring and scaling their team, but they still have really bad systems. And that could be, like, obviously depending on the business, of course, but you've got sales CRMs, obviously project management, you've got accounting tools, you've got tools like Zapier, you've got email marketing software. A lot of businesses now, these information-based businesses, knowledge-based businesses, we use a lot of software products. And the businesses that who are growing quickly, they often come to me and say, look, we're growing quickly, which is a great problem to have, but we don't have good systems. And so by not having good systems, I feel like you end up putting a bit of a limit on how much you can grow or how much capacity you can handle. If you're, for example, a professional services business, maybe you're like an agency, marketing agency, something like that, you're only going to be able to handle as many clients or projects as your systems allow. And so that would be my advice, is early on, make sure you are setting up your tools and systems correctly, planning for growth. You should always be thinking about, how could I double or triple or quadruple my revenue and my capacity? If I doubled or tripled or quadrupled tomorrow, how would I handle that? Both in terms of the people and the team that you have around you, but the systems and the tools that you're using as well. Because I think it's much harder to try and change and optimize your systems later than if you develop a really good foundation from the beginning.
So give us an example of some tools and systems that very productive entrepreneurs and business owners are using.
Yeah. So really common one would be, let's take an example of like some kind of professional services company. Let's just say like a marketing agency or a development agency that does websites or something like that, a client-facing business. A tool like Asana, and it doesn't have to be Asana, Trello, Basecamp, there's obviously dozens of different project management tools, but tools like Asana or some kind of project management system are really useful for tracking, obviously, the work that you're doing. But I think like something simple that a business like that could do is develop a really good process and build that into your project management tool as a template. So it means that, if you say, right, for every new client that we sign up, we're gonna create a new project in our project management tool. There's going to be this template, and this template is going to mean that when we set up and we onboard this new client, we have a really consistent checklist and a really consistent process that we follow every single time. Number one, even just going through that thought exercise of developing the template is really useful. Just thinking about, well, what do I need to do to onboard a new client? What are the steps we need to take? That's a really useful exercise all on its own. And then it's going to streamline the actual, once you set up new projects, new clients, it means getting going, onboarding those clients is really smooth and a lot more efficient. And then finally, another real big benefit of working through an exercise like that is as you grow, as you scale, as you hire more people, you're probably going to be doing less of the work yourself as the entrepreneur, as the business owner. Like me, I did everything when I got started. Now I have a team around me that does a lot more of the work for me. And so when you're hiring people to do the work for you, you need to have your process written down. You need to have it in some kind of project management tool as a template so that when you hire these new people, you can show them the template and say, here's our process. And I think a good benchmark for what a good template is, or a good process is if it's written and explained clearly, you should be able to give it to somebody. They should be able to follow the checklist. There should be instructions in there on exactly what to do. And they should be able to execute on that with very little input from you.
I actually had a guest on once, and he talked about how he implements that type of arrangement in his company where, every once in a while, and I think he even said that it wasn't scheduled, so people didn't know it was coming. He would have people switch jobs and see how well they could perform the jobs based on how good the systems were.
Yeah.
And I think this is fantastic because sometimes in my mind, I separate productivity from systems, right? In my mind, I associate productivity with how much am I going to get done today? And these two are very interconnected, right? Because we're talking about productivity. I always think of it as me personally. If I'm talking about productivity, if I'm talking about efficiency, I'm always thinking about the company, right? How efficient is the company? But they seem so connected. So, to be honest with me, to be honest, you kind of caught me off guard talking about efficiency and talking about systems in this way, but it makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. So with people that are just getting started, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that they've either decided to not hire anybody. They're solopreneurs. They do their own thing, or they don't think they will. And then they eventually do. When would you recommend that people start writing down their processes and they start keeping track of, a step-by-step protocol of how to accomplish certain tasks in order to increase this efficiency?
From day one. even if you think you might just work on your own, you're not going to hire anyone, you're going to do it all yourself. Just like I said before, even just the process of documenting that process of kind of stepping back for a second and going, what is the process? What does that checklist look like? That's a really useful exercise for yourself, even if you're going to be the one just doing all the work. And it's also a nice way of just kind of unloading and getting some of that out of your head. If you're trying to kind of keep everything in your head of like, what is my process? How do I do the work? What's my next action with this client? What do I need to do next? Where is everyone at in the process? If you're trying to remember all that, I don't know about you, but that just kind of adds like a mental weight and a burden and stress to my, this weight to my shoulders. So I would much rather, I have this philosophy really of, my goal is to remember as little as possible. I want, like, our brains, I can't remember who said it. I think it was maybe David Allan, the author of Getting Things Done. I think he said something like, our brains are not very good at retaining information. They're very good at processing information and thinking about what to do and like strategizing and creative thinking, but we're not very good at retaining information. And some people are better than others, but I know that if I try and remember everything, I'm going to go crazy. So I try and offload as much of what I'm thinking about and trying to remember into a system as much as I can, whether that's Asana or Pipedrive, so that I can then use my mental bandwidth for like critical thinking, for creative thinking, for actually processing information and working out what to do next. So yeah, even if you don't plan on growing and scaling your team, which and I will say I was that person.
Mm-hmm.
At the start, I just thought, I'm going to do this all on my own. I don't want the hassle of managing other people. For years, I was very hesitant and resistant to hiring other people. That's all changed in the last 12 to 24 months. And I definitely wouldn't go back. So even if you don't think you're going to hire someone, definitely write the process down, keep it documented, because you might surprise yourself one day. You may well change your mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that there's, as you're talking and right prior to, recording this, I was going through some financial statements, and I was going through the process that I've created for reviewing monthly financials, kind of seeing where we are, seeing if we're on track for the year, things like that, seeing where the opportunities are. And as you're kind of explaining this, I'm thinking about my process for that. And I'm on board with you. As entrepreneurs, we only have so much bandwidth, right? We have much bigger things than remembering, a step-by-step process. We have personnel we have to focus on, right? We have visions that we're trying to curate and goals that we're trying to achieve. And that's where our efforts and our mental bandwidth should go. So anyway, kind of going back to these financials, I don't have a written down process, but I have my forms, and I just go through this process. And as I enter the data, things are calculated for me, and they're packaged in a way that over the years I've learned has helped me manage my businesses. So what are some other forms of creating processes? And am I kind of taking too much of a logical leap here? Or are we on the same page? Is that kind of one way that I'm, not worried about, okay, what do I enter here? What do I, how do I look at my financial statements? I just have this process of going through it almost automatically.
Yeah. I think you're definitely thinking about it along the right lines. Like, in terms of documenting your process, you can write it down. I have documentation, literally just like I'm on a Mac, so I use Pages. I have Pages documents that outline how my email marketing automation works, that outline the instructions that my virtual assistant has to follow, because I'll probably end up replacing her one day if she ends up doing other things. Like I've gone through a few virtual assistants, so I have to have those processes written down. Forms are really good. Yeah, I love forms. We use them a lot with Asana, but we also in the business use things like Jotform and Google Forms, because forms are a really nice way of collecting the necessary information that you need in a really structured way so that you don't forget something. An example would be onboarding a new client. What's all the information you need to start a project? Well, collecting that in a form is really good. And it means that you don't have to think about writing an email and saying, this is everything I need. You just link them to the form. Other tools, like I mentioned Zapier at the start. I mean, we can get into automation. I mean, automation, on the one hand, you've got documenting your process so that you or somebody on your team can go and do it later. But if you can actually automate your process, right, that's a whole other opportunity to be more efficient. Because why do something yourself, or why even have somebody on your team do something if a tool like Zapier or Integromat, these automation products, can actually do the work for you? I mean, that's the most exciting thing for me, is how can I just get software to do my work? I think automation, if you can automate parts of your business, whether it's your email marketing or keeping systems up to date, that's when you have there's a real opportunity to increase the capacity that you have and at what level you can operate, like we talked about before. I definitely wouldn't be able to handle the number of clients that we do without part of our system being heavily automated.
Yeah, I mean, the way to look at it is I either need a machine/computer to do it, or I need a person. I need a warm body to do it.
Yeah.
And, as much as you can delegate to a system, a platform, I think it makes sense. When you first start a business, it seems like you just get inundated with the amount of systems and software and tools.
Yeah.
And so what's the analysis that someone should go through? Because some of them are very expensive. I was just working with our CFO yesterday, and he's looking into this new accounting platform, and it's, $20,000 plus fee just to integrate the data. let
Yeah.
alone the monthly recurring fee. So what is it? Is it this analysis where it's like, hey, any tool, just pay it, and or is there some type of analysis? How do you decide which tools to use and which ones to leave behind?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I definitely remember in the early days being a bit more frugal, and rightfully so. When you're still, you're generating a smaller amount of revenue, you need to be a little bit more sensitive to costs so that you can, obviously keep profits positive and have good take home pay. So you definitely want to be cautious in the beginning. But the way I've always looked at it over the years is, how much is this tool going to help me to save time? And if you start thinking about your time in terms of dollars and kind of put an hourly rate on your time, I mean, that's really easy to do if you are like a coach or a consultant, if you charge by the hour. We don't really do that anymore. We have more packages and projects that we sell, but even still, I still think about my time in terms of dollars. I basically rate my time at about $300 to $400 per hour now. That's kind of what I think it's worth. So if I am presented with, okay, here's some work that I need to do, or here's a process that I'm going to have to do every week or every month, but over here, there's a tool that's maybe going to be $50 a month or something that's going to help me to save that hour or couple of hours per month. You can kind of just look at the two and go, well, the cost is X, my time is worth Y. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. I did my spreadsheet today, actually, because it's end of the month. I go through my financials, probably a bit like you, and I looked at all the software that I paid for. I pay for a bunch of different tools, and last month I probably spent around $1,000 to maybe $1,200 last month on software. So that's, my email marketing tools. And some of these things that's the other thing, is like, some of these things I just can't operate my business without. So I need an email marketing tool. I use ConvertKit. You can use ActiveCampaign, MailChimp. That's like an essential tool for me. That's $380 a month. With the consulting that we do, I need things like Calendly for scheduling me and my team. That's another $80 a month. Then there's things like Zapier, that's $50 a month. But so a lot of these things now for me are non-negotiable because I need them to run my business. Some of them are nice to have because they, like I said, they help you to save time or get back that hour that I was doing it myself manually. So I guess to kind of finish up my answer, I would say, yeah, like in the beginning, you definitely want to pick and choose your tools a little more carefully. Some of them you sort of have to kind of think ahead in time and think, well, yeah, I'm going to be investing in this tool now. It's going to be a bit expensive, but it's going to help me to generate more revenue, or it's going to increase my capacity so I can service more clients. I'm going to boost sales. So you sometimes have to look forward and think about the future benefit you're going to get from that increased efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing, before we switch gears, one thing that I've learned is that if I'm paying something, I need to learn it. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, okay, I'm going to, pay for this software and it's going to solve all my problems. And then you quickly realize, hey, no, it needs somebody to do something in order to be efficient, in order to add efficiency. I'm really struggling with Asana right now. I have a company that uses Monday, and I have a couple of companies that uses Asana. So I personally use Asana, and I'm still learning it. And so you have to, for the folks listening, if you're going to pay for a software, don't think that it's just, it's going to do all the work for you. You're going to have to learn how to use it, and you're going to have to learn how to get the most out of it. Right.
Yeah. I would just jump on that and say, like, I think a lot of people, one of the reasons people switch tools a lot, like I get contacted by people all the time. They say, oh, we're using Asana now. We've tried Trello. We've tried Monday. We've tried Basecamp. And that's always interesting to hear, because I think, well, what are you wanting the tool to do, or what's the problem you're trying to get this tool to solve? And sometimes people have really technical reasons for switching tools, but often the reason for switching tools is, if you actually unpack the problem, it actually comes down to your process and how you're using it. Like you said, they switch to something like Asana because they think, oh, Trello wasn't working because it didn't have the functionality that we need, when actually it's how you're using the tool.
Right.
So yeah, like we said at the start, the tool is only as good as how you use it. I mean, most of these tools are pretty similar. If I wasn't using Asana, I could run my business on Trello or Monday or any of them, because you need to use it properly. A few years ago when I switched, I was using MailChimp for my email marketing, and I'd used it for about 6 years. I switched to ConvertKit for email, and the first thing I did was I signed up to a course, because I knew it was quite different. I also knew it had some capabilities that MailChimp didn't have. And I thought, I want to get the most out of this tool. My email marketing tool is probably one of my more expensive products that I pay for. It's $380 a month. I want to make sure I get my money's worth. I want to make sure I understand how to use it well. And not just to cover the cost of it, but I also know it can help me to boost my revenue. And so now some of the automation that I'm doing with email is generating sales that I would not be getting if I hadn't invested time in this course that really taught me about email automation. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the first things I do when I invest in a new product is I go onto YouTube or I sign up to a course and figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. And you have to give it a fair chance, right? And I've done it in the past where I'm like, I'll spend 5 minutes with it, can't figure it out. And I'm like, hey, let's switch to something else. And what happens is you start at square one, right? And once you get into a system and you have several people using it, the cost of switching, one of over the last 8 or so years, one of my biggest headaches was system software that took us about a year to be back to square one because of, everything that's involved in that. So, and what's funny is that, and this is kind of an aside, it's the same thing with vendors. I used to hop around from vendor to vendor, always looking for whoever, was the slickest salesperson. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, these guys offer pretty much the same thing. And I think it's that way with systems, especially with software.
Yeah.
Well, we've got just a couple of minutes left here, Paul. Setting systems, setting software, setting processes aside, give us some other productivity tips. What are the successful people doing, the most productive people doing, or what are some things they're avoiding? What are some things that people can do to free up time and be more productive and more focused? Is multitasking a thing, or, just wanted to get some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, one of the things I think is really important in the beginning is to not get distracted with shiny objects. There's so much to be done when you're starting in your business and you're in that first 6 months or a year. And there's lots of ways you can spend your time. And also as you grow, I find you get approached more often. I'm sure you've experienced this. You get people reaching out to you. Hey, can we collaborate? I now get people saying, can you promote our service or product? You do Asana, could you do Monday? And what I've learned is the importance of focus and saying no. And the longer I've been in business, the more I've had to learn to say no, because more opportunities come up. There's more potential collaborations and partnerships and ideas that I have as well. And what really has helped me to grow is just staying focused on the things that I do really well. It's the 80-20 principle, from the 4-Hour Workweek or wherever you've read it, this principle that 80% of your output, call it revenue, 80% of your output and profit comes from 20% of your input or your time. So focus and identifying what are the 20% of things that I can do to move the needle and generate 80% of my desired result. That's really important. So being disciplined, staying focused, learning to say no, especially in the beginning when there's so much to do and so many things you can distract yourself with, I think is really important. The other thing I would say to entrepreneurs who are in the early days is look after the essentials. What I mean is sleep, diet, and exercise. Yeah. We often put these things off because I've got so much to do. I'm just going to work, 12, 15 hour day or 12 or a 15 hour day because I need to get all this stuff done. If you don't get good sleep, if you don't look after your diet and eat well, and if you don't get regular exercise and just kind of look after your body, you will burn out. And it's also, it's like sleep, diet and exercise are the systems for your body. We've spent the majority of the conversation today talking about tools and technology and systems so that your business can operate more efficiently. It's the same thing with sleep, diet, and exercise. You have to look after these 3 areas. Otherwise, your body and your mind, your brain will not operate as efficiently as possible. And there will be a limit on how much you can do and what you can achieve.
Yeah, this is awesome. So I read a biography of a guy named Larry Miller, a big business tycoon in the United States, owned the Utah Jazz, big into car dealerships. And he died at a younger age, had severe diabetes because of he didn't eat well. He never exercised, all these issues. And so the question, it begs the question, was he productive? Well, I mean, he was very successful, but his life was cut short, probably, 10, 15 years less than the average person. Yeah. So did he use his time wisely? Some might say, well, if, he went for a jog 3 times a week, he would have lived another several years, right? And so it's kind of stepping back and looking at the bigger picture. And it's not, hey, sometimes we focus on the micro, right? We're focusing on, was I productive today in terms of like smaller scale stuff, when we should step back and say, over the course of the year or 2 years or 10 years or my lifetime. And in order to do that, we have to focus on the things like the 7 habits of highly effective people. Stephen Covey says we should focus on things that are important and not urgent, right? That's where taking care of our body would come in. And we get all frazzled. And what's funny is that I started a workout routine. I really started working out months into my first business. I did it as a way to cope mentally and emotionally with starting a business, but it has brought so many blessings and advantages to my life. And so I think that's a great suggestion in productivity.
The other thing to keep in mind is like, why are you working for yourself in the first place? For me, and I imagine a large portion of your listeners are in the same boat, I got into business working for myself to have more freedom in my personal life.
Yes.
I wanted to be independent. I didn't want a boss to tell me when I have to work or where I have to work or what to work on. I wanted to be in control of my income. Really, it was just about being more self-sufficient. And so that I could do the things that I want, so that I could take time off, go on holidays, spend time with my family, do the things that I want to do. So that's why I got into this in the first place. So if you burn the candle at both ends, if you burn out, sacrifice your health, you're getting away from like, what was the point of this in the first place? So that's always important, is reminding yourself why are you doing this? And productivity, we talked about at the start, it's about being effective and efficient. I mean, without getting too deep, in my opinion, the meaning of life, if there is an answer, it means something different to everyone. For me, I just want to use my time really well. And so you have to use balance. For me, productivity and running my business is a means to an end. And that end is enjoying my life. And so sacrificing my health, sacrificing my sanity is a trade that I don't want to make.
Love it. Paul, this has been fantastic. It's clear that, your stuff about productivity and, business efficiency. This took a great turn for our entrepreneur listeners. Where can people reach out to you and find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, best place is my website, paulminors, minors.com. That's my home on the internet. I also make regular videos for YouTube. You can just type my name into YouTube, and I'm on Twitter. Those are kind of the main places I like to hang out.
Love it. Thanks so much for joining us today, Paul, and nothing but the best in your future, man.
Thanks, Allan.
If you have enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a rating. And for daily inspiration and business tips, follow Allan on Instagram. Until next time, remember, we build the future one entrepreneur at a time.